Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like remembering that we get to create it, not just what's about to happen that we get to watch happen, but how am I
Mm.
an active participant in what's happening so that it helps to have some impact on potentially some impact on the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that, the whole finger pointing thing, right? And that's moving out of victim mentality, right? And pointing the finger at everybody else who should be doing something different than they're doing. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too, because, what you just said makes me think of, I think it's David R. Hawking has a quote that's like, to get where we're going, we don't need leaders with vision. We need leaders of means, right? So we need folks who know how to get us to whatever, the golden age, the promised land, not necessarily just like fantasizing about what that will look like,
Mhm.
right? But we need like tangible action steps for like what in me needs to change in order to get to this new place of being, right? And so like that, like taking accountability for what's mine is a part of that, right? And like honoring that, like sometimes one of my strategies for not taking accountability for what's mine is actually to say, oh, it's yours. You should have done that. You should have been better. It's not me. I'm perfect. I'm awesome. I'm doing everything right. Because that's like a huge pattern in our society. So like, I'm right. I'm right.
Yeah.
Don't look at me, and I wonder if a part of that too is that like we have this like distorted, if I make a mistake, that means I'm bad and wrong, but I'm not bad and wrong. So
Yeah.
I didn't make any mistakes. I do nothing wrong because I'm not bad and wrong.
And of course, what's usually underneath that is the belief that there's something terribly wrong with me and that I'm bad. Right. So God forbid anything should begin to raise that possibility because it hits me right where it hurts. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, at the place I don't want to look
Yeah.
is this underlying belief that I don't think I deserve, or I don't think I'm good enough, or ooh, I'm somehow lacking.
Yep.
Mm.
Yeah, because if you feel really okay and good about yourself, then you can kind of take some criticism or you can take some feedback that might be hard or something, right? Because you don't have this thing that you're trying to kind of keep hidden. Um,
Mm.
but when somebody touches on something that accesses some part of you, some shadow part, ultimately we're talking about, right? That you're denying or um, yeah, is in the shadow,
Mm-hmm.
then that's when you get riled up, let's say.
Mm.
Hmm.
Mm.
Something that's coming through right now too is how it's so easy for us to look at the big players right now who feel like they have the power. And like we watched after the election there was this like within the parties, like it's your fault that it went this way, or um uh like it's so easy to just watch them point at each other and watch the whole thing start to lose its integrity, and nobody claims responsibility and it's not safe to do so, and you have to, it's this like need for self-preservation.
Ooh.
And I think a big point of what we're attempting to do with this podcast is what you all were saying, of bringing it back home to us. What is our responsibility here? What is our capacity to both create a different way of doing it, but to do that as a community, where
Mm.
it's there, we find pockets of safety to lean on each other and be radically vulnerable and share those parts of ourselves that are so deeply wounded or ashamed or fearful with someone, so that they start to lose their hold and we can see them reflected back for what they are, which is just a story that we took on at some point and therefore had become our truth. And so it's just this beautiful opportunity to start to lean into the exploration of that for ourselves and in community is what's coming through.
Mhm.
Mm. Yeah. Well, and, it feels like such a powerful thing to do in community just because of like what you had said, right? Where it's like in our culture, it's actually not safe for leaders to admit that they made a mistake, that they were wrong, that they did something that they were wrong, right? Like more often than not, that means that that leader gets canceled, taken out of their leadership. Like they don't get to lead anymore, right? Which is ironic because like I would prefer to have leaders who can admit when they were wrong, right? Who are willing to be held accountable for their actions, right? You know what I mean? And yet, right, like I'm sure that I've been a part, of that before where it's like, I have a leader in my community, they made a mistake. Let me call everyone up and talk about how many mistakes they made and how they should have been better and blah, 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 without like coming to them, saying anything to them, without looking at myself and being like, one, like, why is this making me so upset? Right? Like, I remember someone once said, right, we're in a supervising circumstance, right? So like if I'm coming to you as a leader and I'm like, this thing you're doing is wrong, and I'm the only one, okay, that's probably a me thing, right? But if like everyone in the community is like, hey, there's something here, then it probably is something that the leadership needs to look at, right? And not like what maybe everyone in the community is struggling with the exact same trauma point, likely, possibly, and also, probably something that the leader could get curious about, yeah.
Do you think that tendency to like attack when somebody's made a mistake is white supremacist like programming?
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
I was listening to We Can Do Hard Things a while back, and I can't remember who the guest was, but it was a Black woman, maybe Tracy Ellis Ross. I can't remember, but they were talking about like Black women. They were saying like, we don't call each other out in public.
Mm-hmm.
If we hear something that somebody's doing, that's a problem. We are going to have their back. And then we might reach out to them and go, and work on it, but not to publicly attack. And that was so powerful to hear. Which it doesn't mean you don't ever disagree. You could disagree, but you don't have to do it publicly. You can do it. Yeah. And God, we see so much of that, don't we? Like oh God. I mean, that's what the news has become. Everybody's like, do you know what he did this time? And now what's he doing? And then he's saying this and he's doing that. It's all the news has become.
This whole entertainment culture.
Gross. Yeah.
That's how the ratings go up. And the image that just keeps coming to mind is like everyone in the dark village knocking on each other's doors, gathering their pitchforks and their torches, like storming the castle. Or, walking to the healer's house and pulling her out in the middle of the night. It's like we are so trained to look outside of ourselves for faults and then to rabble rouse, to get validation around it, rather than taking that road of pausing and tuning into what else we might be aware of with a situation and going to a confidant to talk it through, or in a way that's open to all possibilities. Like, what am I not seeing here? Or what are the possible ways I could get through this in a way that was peaceful and actually brings change? So we're so taught to go to that incendiary response, and it feels like it's so deeply bred into us through our DNA to just go to that place of wrongness, the self-preservation. Well, it's not me, it's them, because the stakes were so high and have been for so long.
Ooh, that feels huge, and again, like when we look at it that way, we can see how this is just a repeating pattern that we have just run for countless generations to keep ourselves safe. And then we can recognize that and then choose something else, right? And it's like, again, why everyone says like this starts within, right? Because like, again, like once the mob is created, you know what I mean? Like they're gonna destroy some stuff, right? Like that energy has been formed. But like if every individual person in that mob had been doing like self-healing and like self-awareness work and like all of this work, like they wouldn't be able to be pulled into that mob mentality with such ease.
Yeah.
You know, like it wouldn't have like that fear lizard brain triggered and then they're like, whoop, better arm up. You know, it's like, you know, the inner healing that we're doing like gives us the space to like make that pause so that we can choose something other than the programming, so that we can build something different than has been built.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another image that was just coming to mind too is like the crabs in the barrel. So it's like, instead of pulling the legs or being afraid to try, what if we start lifting our fellow crabs out of the barrel and like helping each other escape?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, because there's that like classic tenet, if you will, that's like, oh God, I just lost my train of thought. Like being the change that you want to see. So if you want the world that's this, then you need to do that. Right. So if you want to live in a world where you're not getting attacked and cut down for making a mistake, then it's like important to notice when you start to point the finger and want to attack somebody and not judge yourself for it, because we're all very well programmed for it. Right. So, but to just, and I love the word when you use pause a minute ago, Kristen, because that's it, right? Doing the healing work, you have a pause available where you feel your impulse wanting to be to attack or to judge or to blame or to criticize or whatever. Because God, that's the very well-worn path, and certainly greased right now by social media and media in general, right? Like all of that. But being able to feel yourself about to do it and pause and go, no, wait a second. Is this the world I want to live in? And if not, then I'm going to choose something different here. And wait until you know what to do that's different. Am I going to comment on this thing? You know, if you're on social media, am I going to comment? And if so, what's the character of my comment going to be? Is it going to be one that I would want to receive? Or, you know, so it's, yeah.
Well, and there's also that space in this too, right? Of like, okay, so I start following down the path and I start belittling someone or canceling someone. Do I notice that? And then say, whoa, I made a mistake here. That's not how I want to be responding. Let me respond differently, right? Because like, again, right, like that's the skills that we need to foster, because we're building something brand new. We're going in uncharted territory. We're going to fumble. We're going to trip. We're going to go the wrong way and have to turn around. We're going to like reach a dead end, you know, and like, that's okay. That's like part of it, but it's like noticing when we're doing it and being like, oh shoot, I'm doing that thing again. I'm canceling her for no reason because she like said the wrong word. Like, you know, because the other piece of this too is like, what does it look like for us to stand with each other when we make mistakes instead of making each other stand alone when they, you know, like, because again, like there's so much of this like, you know, like PR culture and like, you know, let me save face, like you kept saying, like, let me protect myself, let me save face and not be associated with this person. And so I'll just like pretend like we were never friends and pretend like they weren't important to me because I don't want people to think bad things about me. And it's like that whole, whatever that is, like, is part of, well, it's part of white supremacy, frankly. I mean, it's part of like colonialism and the whole like us versus them, right? They've got canceled. Let me not associate myself with canceled people because I don't want to be canceled. Those are the people who do bad things and make mistakes. I'm not one of those people. Let me not be associated with those bad mistake makers because I'm not one of them. You know, it's like so much of those choices are like all around this like us versus them, insider, outsider culture.
Yeah, that's been a huge awareness for me in my own healing journey around white supremacy and racism within my body and my psyche, is noticing all the times that it didn't feel safe to speak up or say something or acknowledge something, and even just the fear of getting it wrong, like and compounding the problem. So rather than risking saying something, I would say nothing at all. And that feels like one of those really pivotal things for us to look at, especially as white women in this society, because we hold sway with others. We have some level of privilege. And we are deeply trained to second guess ourselves and to live within a bubble of fear because it's not safe, because we've been so trained to subdue ourselves and keep ourselves demure and silent and deferential because it's not safe for our nervous systems to do otherwise. As I'm just saying this, I feel my body start to ooh. Um, and so where can we be aware of those places where we feel the call to say something and we stay silent because of our training.
Yeah, and I so well said, because I was just really feeling into that too, like the brilliance of that as a tactic to keep keep us in our place, right? Like if I have in my body the terror of saying the wrong thing, because then I might get attacked
Yep.
and killed in the past, right? Like, yeah, then it just keeps me silent. It keeps me being the attacker.
Mm-hmm.
And it keeps you
Because,
complicit and like,
right. So
Yep.
it's this idea, this is kind of all just formulating in my brain right now, but um, this idea that there can be something that you said wrong and therefore it's justifiable to attack you, right?
Yeah.
So I think the more committed I get to not doing that, like we were talking a minute ago, right? Like noticing when I'm doing that, the finger pointing, and go, whoa, 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 okay, I'm doing that. The more I draw that back, then hopefully over time I'll learn that it's actually safe to make a mistake, because I'm becoming a safe place for mistakes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So then I might risk saying something, even though it might be the wrong thing, because that whole um, template inside me of mistake equals danger, and I'm not carrying the danger end of that. That's where you can interrupt it, is in the danger end. You become the danger, right? If I stop doing that, then the danger lessens. So therefore, I might be more willing to risk. But yeah, it keeps us all silent. And the white silence, right, in the face of all that we see, is such a huge part of the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just been like just so much conditioning. You know what I mean? When I think of like, there's this course I had taken years ago that was called Before We Were White. And so it was talking all about, right, like the creation of whiteness and the way that like European immigrants kind of got homogenized into this like group called white people, right? But even like prior to, colonizing America, right? Like European people in Europe were being, I guess we can just say, colonized or like civilized or like whatever language you want to put on that, right? Because like, again, right, like we can create all of these like in group versus out group, right? But like a big one within white supremacy is like civilized and uncivilized. And like, like often, right, when I think of like, shoot, like Bridgerton and shit, like what is a civilized woman doing, right? Like she's quiet, she's demure, she's nice to look at, she dances with the man on her dance card and gets married when she's supposed to get married, and like doesn't, she coordinates the food and she coordinates the decorations, but she doesn't have opinions about politics and she doesn't have opinions about insert all of the other things. And so it feels like one of those, like it's important to remember like how long this has been conditioned into our mothers, our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, and that like, and for me, right, like the reason why it's important for me to remember that is for me to be able to feel the weightedness of me deciding to be different, right? Because like it's one thing to say that and I could write that off, like, oh, I'm just choosing something different, big deal, right? But like, okay, all of these hundreds of thousands of generations have chosen this one thing, and not even have chosen, that was the only choice they were given. And now I can do something else. Whoa. Like it feels big, right? It feels like, whoa, is this what we came here for, right? To break these generational patterns, to like stop doing what we are trained to do and like be bigger than the container they gave us, Like,
Yeah, no wonder it's so hard to do, right? So we get to give ourselves a shit ton of grace in this whole
oh
thing.
my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Please, please.
I was just gonna say what's so phenomenal to me is that we can. We can. And we have the tools, we have the skill sets, we have each other modeling it, we have the teachers, we have the society that's open to it, we have people who are awakening and becoming more and more ready to accept this as their role to break these generational cycles of trauma and what's the word, oppression, and we have the means to do it. And so it's again like back to the crabs in the barrel. We're like, you want a knee? You ready to go? I'm here for you, sister. And helping to like launch each other up. What a phenomenal thing. I mean, it's so easy to look at everything that's going on right now and feel like things are just going to shit. And there's no possible way we're going to survive this. But it feels like the pivotal point in a movie when things are looking really bleak, and then here comes the cavalry, and it turns out the cavalry is us. And we're actually doing it, and we have the means to do it, and we are deciding to do it. And it feels
and we came here to do it. Like it's actually exactly why we chose right now to be here.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, full body chills. You know, it's really reminded me, there was a question during one of the 2025 kind of New Year reflection groups that I was in that was like, what is possible in 2025 that has never been possible before? And like, whoo, I feel that big time for this work, like healing around racism and like white supremacy, particularly within white communities. You know what I mean? I feel like white folks are finally ready to look at themselves, or at least like are getting curious about like looking at themselves, because I guess maybe that's the way, you know, like it feels like again, especially like as someone who's been like dipping and dancing like in the world of anti-racism since like I was in high school, so like early 2000s, you know, it's like the climate has changed so freaking much, even from like when I was in college, right? And like I did this like cohort that was looking at class, race, and gender in the United States, the intersection of class, race, and gender. And so we had like a bunch of different courses, like a lit course, a history course, and we had a cohort where we were in all the classes together so that we could like dialogue about that. And it's like, oh my God, like what we were learning then feels like so obsolete compared to like where we are now and like everything that's happened, you know, because that was like pre any of the Ferguson protests, pre Black Lives Matter, pre any of these awakenings that we've been having on a global level. It's like frankly, like the world wasn't quite ready then, but they're freaking ready now. Like we're ready. Like it's time.
Yeah.
And maybe the world was ready then and I wasn't ready, but like I can see how much the global climate has like, even the fact that like we're sitting here having this conversation like speaks volumes to me, at least, to like how much has changed.
Yeah, and you know, one of the main things that I think has changed that is going to enable it to be different, or for the change to happen, is the connectivity that we have now. You know, as much as I give social media, as much as there's a lot problematic about it. And we're so connected now that like I can be talking to you both here. We can be doing this podcast together from 3 different points in this country, through different time zones, right? Like, and people from all over the world can listen. And there's millions of us that are doing this. There could have been millions back then too, but if they couldn't communicate with each other, I mean, there was local organizing and things like that, right? But now we can, I don't know, it's just the web of it is much broader and can reach further. So, and I mean, you know, I'm like the classic white woman that I've been talking to some friends, group of healer women friends, and we've been using my grandmother's hands book, right? We've been having these conversations, and one of them last week, it's so powerful. I'm so appreciative at how honest she is. Was like, I don't know if I have any Black people in my life. I don't know if there's any women. She's like, I have just lived such a white life. And we were talking about how that's by design, right? Like society has been set up to keep white people with white people and Black people with Black people and people of color, like less so now than before, but it's still there, right? And so I think that the connectivity that we have online now also enables me to have interactions with women of color that I might not have been able to know how to do that before. And so that's something that I've been experiencing. So I've been learning so much, and like it's it's hard and it's painful to know just how ignorant I've been and how sheltered I've been and how privileged comes along with that, right? And so now to be able to listen to women of color in particular talk about their experiences, it's like eye-opening to me. And so I think that collectively, a lot more of that is available. So hopefully that's going to help more white women and white people of all genders um, have the same kind of awakening and awareness. And like, wait a second, we've been kept so separate that I haven't seen this. And I need to see this. And if I see it, my heart doesn't want that to be happening. You know what I mean? So it creates the impetus for me to take more action by talking to other white people and be like, oh my God, like what the hell are we doing? This needs to change, you know?
Mm.
So yeah.
I think too, one thing that's so powerful about the change and what's happening right now is that it's not just the ability to connect with one another across time zones and time lines, meaning like somebody might hear this 4 months from now and be like, oh my God. um, but also the healing technology that's available so that we can do healing, a release, an acknowledgement, a ceremony, and have it translate to somebody in the future, or even across time zones right now. But like, how cool that we can have this, and then we can also have it ripple back to our ancestors and make an impact for them and serve their nervous system so that the impact for us is lessened. And the openness and willingness for people to now be able to hear that and be like, that blows my mind, but is that possible? And start to open up to it and feel it for themselves and have the experience of their own life changing as a result of something like this. It's so right on point. And I also love that you mentioned the intentional disconnection and separation of humans so that we're not so tuned into each other's magic. I went to a school that, so elementary, middle, and high school, I was often in the minority. And my life was so rich from all of these different cultures, and being able to sing with people who had these like, you like think of like the church voice. And you're like, holy crap, you can do that. It blew my mind, and I'm covered in chills. And then my life as I grew after that became more and more white. And there have been these moments where I've been like, man, I miss that, but I don't know how to find that again. I don't know how to build that connection. And that's been my story, is that I don't know how, and I wish it was. But even in this conversation, I'm like, that's a story. Like, what else might be possible if I started creating something different and opening up? So I love, Babs, that you even said, I don't remember how you said it, but it was the like an intentional connection of people to other, oh, you were talking about listening to Black women's stories and experiences. I was like, God, that would be powerful to let myself like fully immerse myself in what this whole thing has been like for people of color, even though it might be very painful.
Yeah.
As I'm also building the other connection of getting back into the arts with people who are of all different paths and walks of life and cultures, and letting myself experience the gifts, but also letting myself experience the pain and the trauma, and being willing to hold that as someone with a white body as we're all doing this healing together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so so interesting because like again, right? Like when I think of things I hear here in healing communities, right? It's like releasing judgment, fostering curiosity, right? Where it's like there's so many stories that we've been told about each other that we think are true because we've never had experiences with people like that. And so we just believe what we've been fed, but then we never give ourselves the opportunity to like hear their story. Um, and it's the other thing, the image that was dropping in was like we're moving from like living in a monoculture to like learning how to live in a diverse ecosystem again, right? And so like again, that's why we're talking about like safety in the nervous system. When we're used to everything being the same, things that are diverse feel scary, you know? Like if our entire perception of the natural world is a cornfield and we walk into a forest, whoa, right? Like, you know, and so as white folks, right, like we have been inundated in the cornfield thinking that everything's supposed to look like corn and everyone's supposed to act like corn, but not everyone's corn. And that would be boring as hell. So there's this like invitation for all of us, right? Because like I even think of like the way that monoculture seeps into the world that is being created right now. Box stores, chain stores, ticky-tacky communities that always look the same. Everyone goes to Starbucks. Everyone goes to McDonald's. You know, like there's no ability to handle anything that isn't the expected, right? Like that's literally how we're being trained is to like know what to expect and get it. And then we wonder why we like derail when like they're out of soy at Starbucks. You know, it's like we've never and imagine, you know, and so it's like we're all having to learn how to be okay when things aren't at what we expect, when things are unknown, you know, again, right? Like we're literally being trained out of that through all of these spaces, right? Like I'm someone who doesn't like going to chains, so I tend to like look for local um coffee shops or whatever, right? But like what's something that I have to navigate? When I walk in, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't, you know, it doesn't, I don't know if they're going to have the drink I want, right? Like I have to go and be a little uncomfortable and ask someone for help or find the cashier. You know what I mean? Like I don't get to just go through the motion, you know, business as usual. And so there's this invitation, I think, for all of us to like think on like, have we designed our lives to be only what we expect? And so then we can't live outside of that space.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, right, when I think of white supremacy culture, right, like why is it that when I hear a story, and maybe not me, but when some of us hear a story that is radically different than my life experience, that I can't make space for that truth in my reality, right? Like what is going on inside of me that says their truth cannot be true too?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then the other thing that was coming up as well, you know, again, this is a strategy I've used for years, but like I tend to watch shows that were made like by and for Black people, right? Like what white people would probably call like Black shows, right? And like part of why I do that, like one is because like I'm trying to normalize that like this is for all people, right? Like this is for me too, in the same way that we think white things are supposed to be for everyone, like Black things can be for everyone too. And I will say that like it allows me to have the space to like create more space for what an experience is while it's just an actor on a TV screen. And I'm not going to be offending anyone with my facial expressions or with my surprise or with my like, I can't believe that you had to go through that, you know, because that can be triggering for people too, where it's just like, you can't believe it. Yeah, you're so blind to the world that you can't believe that my life is hard as a Black person. You know, like that can be a really trying thing. You know, it's same, not same thing, but like women, I'm sure have a experience like that when men, are, you know, but anyway, just as a strategy, right? Where it's like, watch, you know, because again, right, like white folks will tend to avoid things that are for Black, you know, they're like, oh, well, that's not for me. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it is, it's a TV on public network, you know what I mean? Like, you know, and I get like that fine line between like trying to take something that's not yours, you know what I mean? And also, right, like when we're talking about movies and TV shows, right, like these are here for all to witness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and doing it intentionally to help us become more aware and dissolve that our own barrier within ourselves of otherness and separation.
Mhm.
Not,
Exactly.
again, not from that place of like, well, I love that you said this is for me too, but it's also like being very aware of that place where we've been trained of like, um, hmm, what are the words? It feels like it goes really deep of like, I don't want to see that pain. I don't want to know the existence of that experience, because then I will have to justify or make sense of that, of being that perpetrator that has caused it to be so hard, or has caused the level of that damage, or been part of a culture that has had that be okay.
Mm.
So I think on some level, it's again that self-preservation that keeps us from it, because we might see something that we don't like that points back to ourselves.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It also feels like, oh, it's much easier to do harm to people when we don't humanize them,
Yes.
right? And so, like, when we're forced to see, oh my God, they're just like me.
Yeah.
They're just like me. Their
And that's
family,
one of the tools
you
of
know?
capitalism. Yeah, is the
Yeah.
dehumanization.
Yeah. Cause, like, that's like one of the, like, biggest pieces within, like, well, like how I've experienced like the racism in my family, right? Is that like that perception that like they are different than us, right? And like again, I just every time I say that, I just hear that Pocahontas song, which means it must be evil. It's like there's no like that's not a real story, but it's been told so many times, and we've never been given opportunities, or rather, I'll say it like this: we are so oriented to differences that when we first look, we say, oh yeah, look, they're so different than us. Look, food different, clothing different, music, whatever, different. But we need to attune to like the sameness. Like, oh my gosh, love, connection. They're just a kid. They're just, like, because that's one of my big ones that I like, that always is heartbreaking for me, is like our inability to see Black children as children, right? Like, and that is like years of conditioning, years of fucking, yeah, racial conditioning, like, yeah. Yeah. But again, it's like, and not to like brush over and be like, we're all the same, but like part of us has to hold on to that piece of like, we're all part of the same human family. We're all sparks of the same fire, we're all the same soul stuff.
I think that's one of the driving pieces of what we are doing here, is looking at where are we fractured from that truth of wholeness and oneness, because it does go so deep. I posted that thing on Facebook that Cartrice, one of our guides, shared with us, our mentors, about how they used to use Black babies to bait alligators for alligator hunting. And it's like, and that was, reported in the news as being this like, this thing that happens, and it's no big deal. When we read this 100 years later and we're like, this is a fucking huge deal. How was this possible that this was allowed? And so we look at where we still have things within ourselves that would have permitted something remotely like that. And it is that like separation of, my kid is playing with a Black kid, and I'm now like, well, thank God. Like, this is fucking amazing. And this child is so beautiful, and look at how sweet and how talented and how funny and clever they are. Whereas, you know, 5 years ago, when my older daughter was young, I would have been like, oh my gosh, I hope that I know how to behave, or my child knows how to behave around this kid who is different. because there's been this change in me of seeing them as like coming from this place of shame, where the shame of what my culture did to the child of ancestry in this culture. And I'm so ashamed that I feel like I have to show up on my best behavior. And I hope my child is on her best behavior so that we're not continuing this cycle of domination and difference and persecution. And we need to still honor that, yes. And there is this level of importance that we are building the truth and the energetic web of sameness, of common humanity, and honoring and seeing that in each other, so that that's what we are knitting into the web that we're weaving.
Mm. Mhm. Mm. It's so interesting too, because, and I don't know if this is like, again, part of like the white supremacy culture that like, or like patriarchy that like loves the individual, you know what I mean? Because I can feel that part inside of me that like wants to like honor the sameness, and then the other part inside of me that like wants to rebel, like, and be like, but there's uniqueness, but they're different, you know. And so it's such an interesting like both and space to be in, of like, yes, we all are this like one, and like we're all having these individualized experiences that get to be honored, and like, and that like allow us each to bring something unique into the whole, that like, because of our unique experience and perspective, like we all get to have this now, you know?
Yeah, and I think it really comes down to listening,
Mhm.
right? Like when you were talking earlier, Clarissa, about, I don't know, you've said so many wonderful things, but I was thinking about, um, God, I'm losing my train of thought frequently. There's just so many thoughts going on. But anyway,
You know how that is.
the shame piece, right?
Mm.
And like the best way to prevent, to not feel your own shame, is to point the finger to at somebody else, right? So in order for me not to feel the shame, not to have the shame come up or whatever, not to express shame as a person being in a white body, is to have some beliefs about, quote, them.
Mhm.
And this is what, there's so much of this, right? Like the whole welfare queen myth or whatever, or they just don't work hard enough, or they, whatever the they is, right? And that's a way to deflect, point the finger, put the blame on them, rather than being willing to look at the dynamic and the programming that we've all been living under. Because it's not about, shame is not helpful in any way in terms of healing, right? So this is not about like we should all be ashamed as white people of what our kind have done to them, right? That's not what this is about. It's being able to look at the reality and listen to people, like I was saying earlier, listening to women of color. And I mean, my heart in Kairos broke so many times this past year, like um when I would hear some of the women of color in the container, when they felt safe enough, because this is a big piece,
Mhm.
sharing their experience of what their life has been like trying to navigate white spaces. And to hear somebody that I know and care about sharing that, and like, holy crap. I don't know, it just cracked open my heart in so many ways of, first of all, knowing the energy that women of color have had to expend in order to navigate white spaces, because of how unsafe we have been in all the different ways. One of which is, like you said earlier, Kristen, like like being shocked when people share their experience, right? Like, oh my God. And I remember hearing Dave Chappelle after the first time Trump was elected. He was the Saturday Night Live host that Saturday after the election. Do you remember watching that? And he was kind of laughing and mocking white people at how shocked we all were that Trump was elected. He was just laughing, and this is what I remember of it anyway. And I remember as a white person being a bit affronted by this and like, what do you, how dare you, make fun of this? But he was like, how does it feel? Like we've known this all along, and now y'all are just seeing it, right? Like it was very important for me to watch that and to watch myself experience it. At first, I was offended, and then I was like, I'm offended, and that's exactly what he's talking about.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
but it's that whole like being able doing the nervous system healing work and being able to feel all the stuff in your body without defending yourself by pointing a finger somewhere else, right? I mean, this I've just circled this right back around to the beginning, to the finger
Mhm.
pointing,
Mhm.
without knowing that I was doing that.
Well, and
Yeah,
I love,
being willing to feel the discomfort, the clean pain,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that you use the phrase like let my heart crack open, because really, like, as white women, that is what is needed now, right?
Yeah.
Like we need to let our hearts crack open. We need to let our love get bigger than we have ever allowed it to be,
Yeah.
like that is what is needed, and like, and again, right? Like we are totally perfectly positioned to do this, right? Like we, there are so many women on the planet right now who can hold the space for that grief to flow, right? Because like, frankly, there's a lot we need to grieve, right? Like that act of our heart breaking open, like that is grief. That is love expanding, and like by not allowing ourselves to like look at it, feel it, have our heart broken open, like we've just not let ourselves love. We've been denying love to the world, to each other, and so it's like, that's what we get to do. We get to love more, and we get to be together as we unshame ourselves and let ourselves like feel the heartbreak, but also like, gosh, like how great will life be when our love gets to be that fucking big? When not just our love, but like everyone's love gets to be that big. Like, what does the world look like then?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's possible for us? Like when we all can love each other that fiercely, watch out.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's like what utopia looks like.
Oh,
This, this new golden era that we're talking about, that we're building toward, that's in a way that actually feels relatable. And it feels like we are beautifully wrapping up into a healing closing that we can do in a minute here. And one thing I just wanted to add as we're wrapping up this episode is this notion of diversity in wholeness is not homogenizing to something new, because that's the old, right? It's this, what kept coming through was the model of nature for us, and the wisdom of nature, of how all of the pieces are so different and complicated in their own ways, and diverse and beautiful, and they all create this beautiful interesting that I was heading toward that word, organism. But what if it is? It's like orgasming into this beautiful creation of oneness and wholeness. And I mean, you think about this planet and how magnificent it is. And it only is that way because everything is so different and it's all symbiotically working together. So what if that was the culture that we are creating, and the humanity that we are creating is we're all just beautifully being authentically ourselves and fully whole, full of honoring the divinity and the essence that we each are in ourselves and as each other and for each other and with each other, and cultivating this new way of being in healing, in wholeness, in honorance of each other, that doesn't pollute and doesn't tear down and doesn't rip apart, unless that's part of the process of healing, right? And holding that for each other as we continue to do that and create more of that wholeness within each other, for the future, for society. And that's what we're aiming toward, and letting ourselves feel and fumble our way into being.
Mhm.
Oh, yes.
Is there any
Mhm.
last like ceremonial locking in of that or creation of that or invitation? I don't want to say locking in because we want to leave this space for people to be where they are and feel triggered by what they're triggered by and have questions and be in the unknown. But anything that we'd like to do to support people who might be here in moving any energy or anchoring in anything that feels relevant for them. Does anybody feel called to take that on?
Well, I'll just say I can feel a lot of energy like wanting to move through. I don't know exactly what wants to move through, but I can feel like when as you were like setting that stage, I could feel like so I guess I'll just intend for us to pull it through collectively and we'll just see um what comes through. But I'll just start with just inviting everyone to just take a few breaths here. Just start landing once again. A lot has been said. A lot has come up, most likely. And so just allowing yourself to just land here, be present. Letting yourself just release anything that is not yours, anything that doesn't need to be held by you right now. Just letting that fall away. You can really be present to what's alive for you here in this moment. As you present yourself to what is here right now, I'll invite you to just send some roots, some tendrils, some anchors just down into the earth, feeling that you are completely supported from this earthly realm, from this planet. Feel that she is offering you any strength that you might need here, any grounding, any vitality. Also feeling that you can just release anything that's ready to be released, anything from your lineage, from your DNA, from your ancestry, like from your bloodline that's ready to be released. Just feeling it filter into Mama Earth, knowing she turns shit into gold. Mm-hmm. Letting yourself just breathe and release here. And as you feel ready, you can let your awareness just move up, up, up your body towards your crown. You can feel as though your crown chakra, like a beautiful flower, is starting to open, unfurrow. And as that bud that is your crown chakra opens, I invite you to just breathe in that loving light from source, imagining that light from the sun even can just permeate your being, igniting and burning away anything that doesn't serve you, and enlivening and energizing all that which is for you now. Letting that light filter into your being, permeating every cell, every molecule. And I can feel the final thing that is wanting to come through is just full permission here to just unplug from any of these recurring patterns, from any of these harmful programming, from any of this inherited stories or beliefs. Just letting yourself be unplugged from all those which no longer hold promise, and from all those that don't serve you. Letting this just be effortless, feeling those plugs just whoop, whoop, effortlessly detach. Letting those just fall away, if that feels right. And then I guess allowing yourself to plug in to the new, to the future, to the uplifting. I mean, you don't have to know exactly what you're plugging into. You can just make this intention that you will be plugged in to that which is for your highest good and for the highest good of all. And so it is.
I keep hearing a melody coming through. So I might just turn off my sound, my muting, and just let that flow through and anchor in. Anchor in everything that is here for us to take and imbue and absorb and integrate into our systems. And I love how you invited us to just have it be so simple as unplugging and plugging in to what does serve now, letting fall away anything that doesn't, without having to make so much meaning about it. If it's really ready to be that simplified, letting it be that simplified, inviting us to hang on to anything that requires deeper exploration for our highest learning and growth as well. But allowing that sometimes it really can just be that simple. I think that was one of my Celtic ancestors sending that one through for us. Taking a deep breath in, and shaking your body out, letting your molecules receive and release how they do. Receive and release, receive and release. And Babs, if there's anything that's there for you to share, we always love your wisdom.
Yeah, I feel I don't know if it's a prayer or a blessing coming through. I envision a world in which all people, all individuals, all groups, all peoples are respected and honored in their uniqueness, in their individuality, in their differences, and in their samenesses. There's a connection point where all hearts are free and open and feel safe with one another, feel safe to be seen, feel safe to speak, feel safe to make mistakes. where we all get to be in spaces together, trusting that we are loved, we matter, who we are is honored and loved and perfect. May it be so for me. May it be so for you. May it be so for all of us.
So it is.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Wow.
Mm.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. That was beautiful.
That was great.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And to anyone who may hear this at any point in time, reach out with questions,
Yeah.
comments. Be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the healing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm.
Hmm.
Mm.